Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet up on the front table. I'd like to take a moment to review the procedures that the board will follow tonight. First, the board will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we'll hear comments from the public. If you'd like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the board. The board shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the board. The board will then formulate and vote on a motion. The motion will typically either grant or deny the requested application. Any board member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda item. Any person desiring to appeal the board's decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the filing of this decision with the Planning and Zoning Office. Are there any public comments on matters not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Okay. Motion by Pam, second by Tom to approve the previous meeting's minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. Okay, I'm going to move down to item 5. The public hearing is now open. Dan, I believe we need to accept some new material that we received here. So do I have a motion to receive, or do you want to explain that first?
Yeah,
okay.
If I could explain it. There were a few questions in addition asked of the applicant, and they've provided us with some materials. I laid those out in front of you, and I asked that it be received into the record. One of them is an email you'll see from September 28th, the exchange with Kathy Tabke. And also it's from the marketing department of American Wind Power. And there's another one from September 30th available as well, and October 4th. And that's just some additional supplemental information about the systems as well as the site plan and spacing. And so that information is available. So I do ask that that be received into the record. All three of them as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We have a motion to receive these new comments. Okay, we have a motion by Pam. Do we have a second? Motion by Pam, second by Tom to receive the new comments. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. Okay, Dan, if you would you please read the conditional use permit application and give us the staff report?
Yes, thank you. This conditional use permit is for 3 requested private wind turbines. Conditional use proposal. L&K Tabke Holdings LLC, property owner Kathy Tabke, has filed a conditional use permit application for the installation use of these 3 100-foot tower wind turbines to reduce the electrical costs on the farm. The proposed locations are about 5.2 miles southeast of Mobile. It's on the south side of 195th Street and east of Jasper Avenue. The property is located in the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District. An electric wind generator for private use is classified as a conditional use, and the Section 3.03 of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance, which is our land use summary table. This is eligible for zoning commission review, which they have reviewed this previously, and for consideration of the Board of Adjustment consideration for approval. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been requested to comment based on the requirements set forth in the zoning ordinance. The proposal can meet the criteria of approval of the conditional use. The zoning commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment. And we didn't get a whole lot of comments from the neighbors, but anything that was received was available in the report that was published. I believe I had an inquiry from actually a couple from Jeanette Coomer, who just kind of asked about it relative to her property, and Anthony Ashley just asked about the process. So that's what I got.
Okay, thank you, Dan. At this time, would the applicant like to address the board?
Hello, I'm Kathy Tebke. My address is 3112 195th Street, and I just want to thank you for considering this proposal.
Excuse me, could you hit the button on that microphone? Other one, just so the red light is on at the top. Yep, thank you. I got pushed off actually.
I'm Kathy Tebke, and I live at 3112 195th Street in Mobile, and I just want to thank you for considering this proposal to build the 3 wind turbines. Would you like me to introduce Carrie?
Sure.
This is Carrie, the marketing person from American Windmills. He came from,
Well, we have offices in about 13 states, but a few things about the wind turbines, I think it's important to understand. Everybody sees the giant wind farm machines, and these are not them, okay? They're 100-foot towers as opposed to 400 and 500-foot towers. The big ones are 400 or 500 feet diameter. These are 30. So they're just designed for small businesses, farms. The manufacturer is in Norman, Oklahoma, Berge Wind Power. They've been in business since 1977. They're considered kind of the gold standard. They're certified by the Small Wind Certification Council, one of only 6 turbines that meet those requirements. We've had this particular type tower in service for 41 years, and I personally don't know of any failures. And the turbines are very quiet, extremely safe. Warranty covers them for winds up to 130 miles an hour, and we've seen them through that. So just a nice piece of equipment that, if you look at Kathy's location, she's out in the sticks, for lack of a better word. But so I don't think there's any impact to the local public. And I'd be happy to answer any type of questions that you guys might have.
Do you have any wind turbines in the area that, that people have had that prove that they're sound, that they're good, they're working well? And
I don't know an exact number in Iowa. There's probably 50 scattered throughout the state. We have one over at Walker Brothers Roofing, and what is that town?
Kyle Walker lives between Hornick and Sloan, and he's had one in operation for a year.
for a year, and it's going good.
Yeah, he's very happy with it.
Thank you.
You did provide a lot of information in here, and we really appreciate that. One of the things that I was not, maybe it was in there and I just didn't see it with the quantity that was there. I believe it was asked for a safety data sheet. Do you have that?
Safety in terms of,
It's what the manufacturer puts out on recommendations for We've had them on other, that we've actually gotten them on the bigger machines also. And it's what the manufacturer recommends for such things as setbacks and everything else. So that they're the engineers that build it,
Right.
and we're looking for that expertise from them.
I included a lot of data about the tower engineering, and typically our typical installation is typically on a farm. So we'll typically, I keep saying typically, we'll put the tower about 5 feet from a machine shed is what we normally do. And like I said, in 41 years, hundreds of towers, we've never had a tower fail. The manufacturer feels very strongly about the safety of their equipment. They are one of only 6 wind turbines in the United States that are certified by what's called the Small Wind Certification Council. So, and that is managed by the Department of Energy. So there's some pretty exhaustive testing that the turbines have to go through before they're approved.
And that's the data that we would be looking for from that
Okay.
safety data sheet.
I can definitely email you that. May have sent it. I don't know. I could look through that real quick, but
Well, I know there was an operator's manual,
Mhm.
and it had a lot of data in it, but it's kind of a twin to a material safety data sheet for like chemicals and things. They're required typically, if the customer asks for it, they have to give it type situation. But each one of these machines are unique in different ways, and those engineers can better tell us the unique part of their machine better than anybody else.
well, I would say that the Small Wind Certification Council document would, basically certify that the turbine is safe, that it's
I'm not looking necessarily I'm not questioning its safety,
right.
but it comes to the siting of it. What we've found is that there's different setbacks for different machines
Yeah.
based on how they are built.
The rule of thumb in the industry is based on the predominant winds, which in this part of the country are primarily north-south. So for siding, we keep them 8 rotor diameters apart, north-south, and east-west 4 rotor diameters, which in this case would be about 120 feet.
From each other.
Yes.
So, yeah, but for me, without seeing that document, I don't know what the engineers are saying this is actually safe for this machine. The rule of thumb isn't really what we're looking for on something like this. And it's not, what we found is it's not uncommon for them to not necessarily give it to you without asking for it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're looking for. I can get a letter from the manufacturer if that would satisfy you. But I've been putting up turbines for 41 years, and I've put them up all over the Midwest. And so we understand the, harmonics, the turbulence from the machines, and we cite them, based using industry principles and practices.
Well, I'm a little concerned. It's really close to those hog buildings.
Like I said, that's the towers just pose, if you look through the tower material and the statements from the engineers, I don't know if you had a chance to read that, but they state the safety.
Well, I didn't see anything that actually stated like a safety data sheet would state on the distance. So like, just to give you an example, whenever you take something like this and stick it up in the air, it's a lightning rod. And there should be rules in that safety data sheet that tells you how far anybody like working on that or working around that, how far they should be from that structure in the case of a thunderstorm.
I guess I'm going off this communication here, which I believe Kathy provided us. It's a drawing here kind of showing the placement of these. Just just going along with kind of what the point Doyle is making, at this location here that you have labeled number 3, it says preferred location of wind turbine. I believe in our information, it shows from this wind turbine to the county right of way is in the neighborhood of 170 feet. And we're, you know, it's our job to make sure that we don't approve anything that, you know, could harm the public or the public right of way or something like that. So what we're looking for is, you know, information on this turbine that says, well, yes, this is, you know, a safe distance to be from a public right of way or this public road. Do you have anything like that to tell us that we are good here with that distance? Or
I could provide you something, but at 170 feet, you've got an extra 50 feet of fall distance before it could hit the road. Which-
sure, if it were to just fall completely
Yeah.
over. Yep. I guess, do you have any information on us? I mean, if this were to throw a little bit of ice, is there a danger of that hitting someone on the road?
No. The small, again, a small turbine, we really don't have a lot of reports of throwing ice because they are that small. And what happens if you have an ice storm, it kind of retards the airfoil. So it just won't even turn hardly until the ice melts enough to fall off. And then it basically just falls straight down. It doesn't. Some of the big ones will actually start regardless if their blades are iced up, but ours do not. They have to be started by the wind. And if you have a lot of ice load, it's going to affect the airfoil to where it won't be able to self-start until that ice is melted off. But I can get you a statement that put something together. I mean, typically, like I said, we're probably have 50% of our installations are within 10 feet of buildings.
If they've passed that certification, the document should.
Well, that's what that
definitely
document, the Small Wind Certification Council was based on, was tower design, turbine design. And that's what you're meeting these standards that you're referring to. And I believe that document should be in there.
Well, that talks about the specific tower, but we need to know the specifics of that tower in relation to other things that are around it. That makes sense. And the part of the reason why we're talking about this is because we've had difficult getting them before, and when we got them, we got big surprises. It wasn't what we were told. It was a lot different than what we were told. So these manufacturers have to put this information out, and those engineers typically aren't going to risk things. And that's the kind of information that I would be looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I see you do have the Small Wind Certification Council document. That's pretty much says you can put them 5 feet away from a building without any risk, extremely minimal risk. Yeah. Because in order to have that standard, you have to have your turbines in operation for so many thousands of hours, so many years. It has to be a commercially available piece of equipment, and it has to meet just some extremely rigorous testing as far as the tower and the turbine itself before they can receive that approval.
Could you go into a little detail on the terms that you have with REC on is this, because the excess will be sold back to REC? Is that
Yeah, so they offer something called net metering. So what that does is it basically, they call them a smart meter, but essentially anytime the turbine, let me back up. Whatever the turbine produces is going to go towards Kathy's load first. If it's not producing enough, the difference will automatically flow in from the utility. If it's producing more than what she's using, the excess will go back. That meter will record it and should give her retail credit until such time as she might zero out for the month. At that point, they'll pay their what they call their avoided cost, their wholesale rate
Okay,
for the excess power.
And I spoke to REC this morning and I've given them the interconnection agreement. It's signed and they reviewed it and said everything was okay on their part. And they will forward it upon approval or disapproval to NIPCO. And NIPCO is the one that will purchase any excess electricity that goes back into the system, not Woodbury County REC, but NIPCO.
okay, all right. Do you know how much electricity you currently use? And how it would compare with what's being projected to be produced?
No,
Okay,
I did not bring that information with me.
The turbines should be sized so that she doesn't overproduce. It should about meet
Okay.
her load with the hogborns out there.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't put turbines in, you know, because typically what we sell is just to offset what that user has. If he has a hog barn, he's spending $500 a month probably. So that's about what one turbine will provide.
So in one of your emails, you talked about the farmers take risks, you know,
Mhm.
and we do, we take a lot of risks. But usually we do a risk reward. So when you were looking at putting these close to the building, that you were okay with that risk.
Absolutely.
What is the reward to putting them that close?
Generating electricity to help pay for the pit fans. We, Lane looked forward into the future and that summer before he looked into these, there were brownouts. And with hog buildings, you have to have available electricity to run the pit fans. And there are 3,400 hogs in there at any given time. And he wanted to make sure that we had something that could generate electricity. We've got the generator, but looking forward, he knows the electricity will become more expensive, and he felt that this was a good option. He also considered these turbines to be another piece of equipment. And that was how he looked at it. And so he purchased them in April of 23. And then with supply chain interference, and then when he was diagnosed with cancer, it got put on the back burner.
Sure.
And so now we're here trying to finish Lane's job.
One point about why we like to go close to buildings is just for economics. The customer's responsibility is the electrical from the base of the tower to their breaker panel. So if we put it right next to the building, it's 10 or 15 feet, and then we just tie into a 125 amp breaker in their panel. So it just keeps it simple. If we're several hundred feet away, it's a bigger wire size. It's, so it's much more expensive. Plus, in the future, if you ever had to replace it, it's a relatively inexpensive replacement as opposed to if you had several hundred feet of electrical wiring.
So the real cost benefit is the reward for going that close.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess maybe Dan, this would be a question for you potentially, but if we were to approve, something with these distances from these buildings, and I'm no expert on this, but I mean, it does seem close for the height of them, but we are allowed to put a disclaimer in there that would take the county's liability away from any accidents that might happen if something were to go wrong with these towers that in that close proximity to a building.
I think you would have to have something that points out the risk at your risk. It was kind of referenced at the zoning commission, that respective point, because there's always that, on anything in zoning, there's always some level of type of risk. And so That would probably be something, if the board is to look at this for approval, it would have to be part of a resolution likely.
Okay, thank you. I see here a note says at the bottom of one of these communications that all placement is dependent on the professional's final suggestions for optimal use. Will you be that one making that final suggestion, or will this be someone actually on site that will be building or constructing these?
It would be myself.
Okay, I guess, where are we at on that? I mean, do you, or the information we have here, is this going to be the final placement?
Yes, give or take, foot or two. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I made that statement. I considered the input of the electricians also. So it may, I, I put them there because it looked to me as I walked around the buildings to be the best placement for these based on the slope of the land and a ditch for the tile input. And then on the south side of the south building, there's a hog pit and the center of the hog curtains. And I didn't want anything to interfere with needing to repair any of that information. So I moved it away from what Lane had originally anticipated.
Does anyone else have any questions on the board of the applicants? Seeing no further questions from anyone on the board, would someone like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, I have a motion by Doyle to close the public hearing. Do I have a second? Second by Pam. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. I'd like to open this up now, in between ourselves here, and, if anyone has any comments, I'd like to, hear those now or entertain comments from any of you guys if you have any further input here.
I really feel that in order to be consistent with what the Board of Supervisors has done, they've essentially required data safety sheets. And I think we should require that also, due to the fact that when we've gotten data safety sheets, it was the things that were in there were a material shock to most people, and that, it wouldn't be prudent of us to look at these. And the big part that I'm looking at is, the location of the wind turbines to the hog buildings. If something were to happen, we have first responders that have to go out there. By putting those two things together, it does add some risk if something were to happen. And I think we have to think about safety of people who would be possibly in harm's way in that case. I think we just have to back up that, we aren't putting risk there that we don't know about.
Can we, could we approve with conditions that the safety sheets be provided and that, all requirements of whatever agencies are met and, um, with the risk being assumed by Ms. Kathy Tabke.
To answer, that's kind of, if you're looking at, that from an informational standpoint, you kind of got to look at contingencies and different things on if it comes back with different data where you have a threshold on whether it can be approved or not, and then you run into a discovery of some sort on the safety data sheet. I think contingency versus kind of clarity, you kind of got to balance those two out. And if you're to kind of look at that route, the Board of Adjustment is designed to have this initial meeting to discover more information where you could require them to bring it back before you make a decision. Because we do have this, the 30-day time frame where we could, like last time, I guess we did that with the previous application last month, where we have another public hearing / meeting where if this board has any expectations that they feel they need more information, it'd probably be suitable to use that 30-day time frame versus a approval / contingency scenario. It just, of course, it's up to the board.
Okay.
What do you think of that, Doyle, as far as safety data sheets? I mean, I don't know, is there a way to approve with the conditions in place, requiring MSDS sheets for these? I'm not sure that there is necessarily, unless, we have some means of knowing, that the county's not on the liability hook for the placement of these.
Well, it's, to me, it's more than just liability. The safety is more than just dollar amounts. However, I think with our past experience that we've noticed on the supervisor end being so far out of what we expected, that it would be prudent to give this another 30 days to gather the information to back that up.
I like the thoroughness, of the application here. I think
Yeah.
we're close. I think we're really close. This is, technically our first approval, or denial of an application like this. Since the Walker one was put in after the fact and we had to retroact that, we couldn't do anything about that since that was already actually constructed. So I understand where you're coming from on that side of things.
We were also unaware of the safety data sheets, I believe, when the Walker one when it was finally approved.
If we were to require, just a safety data sheet of this of this exact tower, what do you think we should do moving forward then? Do you have an idea of what we should do at this meeting? And what would your thoughts be if,
I would recommend that we table this for 30 days, look at it and allow the applicant to come back with safety data sheets from the manufacturer. And then we look at it again and like I say, they've provided a lot of information, but that one bit of information from the actual manufacturer is really key to what we can really do with these, whether we can approve these or not in that particular location.
Tom or Pam, with what Doyle has mentioned, do you guys have any further questions or comments about that idea?
I think it's fine to allow them to get the data sheets and, if they don't have a problem with waiting.
If we want to further clarify this, do we need to have him come up to the microphone and just ask?
Yeah, if you're gonna, if
Okay,
you're gonna have exchanges, you'll want to come to the microphone and
Okay.
make sure they're turned on too.
My apologies. I'm just not sure what a safety data sheet is, but I can work with the manufacturer if we can put one together, but that's really what we have that certification council for.
you understand what Mr. Turner was asking for?
No, I do
It
not.
would be something from the actual manufacturer that makes the turbine that says during construction, stay away X amount of feet, or do not place this within X feet from something, that just something that, that would, their recommendations for how these are constructed. I believe that's all we're asking for. Would you have a problem with
No.
providing that?
Sure, absolutely.
Does anyone else have any questions for him while he's up here?
You can also, if you do have trouble finding something and you need more clarification, you can work with staff.
Sure.
Dan is always very accessible
Sure.
and willing to work with people. So if we can add guidance to that process, we're more than willing.
I hate to have Kathy have to wait another 30 days, but we could have that to you in a couple of days. But
On that, Dan, if we do require this, we still have to wait the 30 days to the next meeting for the next public hearing on this, don't we?
Yeah, typically, there's a lot of considerations outside of these board meetings as far as scheduling of these meetings with like security and courthouse operation, but typically the protocol is to use the Board of Adjustment evenings.
I guess, what is the general, I'd like to ask the board here, you can sit down, sir, if anyone else has any questions. I think we're good. Thank you. What do you guys think then? Do you think we should wait and wait for the approved sheets to be given to us and put this off for the next meeting?
And do they think they have the MSDS sheets on hand or
The manufacturer will have them.
they
I
weren't
mean,
sure?
yeah, I mean, they aren't always willing, they aren't overly always wanting to share them, but they have them. It's a requirement.
For chemicals.
Yep.
But for,
It's just like for what we get for chemicals, only all manufactured things have them too.
I believe I am okay with that, just for the fact that since this is our first official, meeting on dealing with one of these, I want to make sure that we do it right. I agree with Doyle. I think this is something that would probably be readily available for them to just ask the manufacturer, hey, please forward us MSDS sheets, and we could see those before the next meeting.
Do you want a motion to that effect?
I believe that is the general consensus here of the board. Is everyone kind of agreement on that we are in the motion phase now?
Well, unless there was a way around it, unless there was a way that we could make that exception in the motion, I mean, that we would say, if they can produce those and get them to us within 2 days.
You would need to have kind of a threshold or a criteria. The safety data sheets, the goal is that they substantiate the safety of the structure being requested in place so that it can peacefully coincide with the location of the property, the assets on the property, the public, et cetera. Safety data sheets look very specific at safety measures like
So
Well-
why doesn't this stand for that?
well, I'm just kind of responding, I guess, to as far as what the board is saying, as far as That's likely an industry document. I can't speak one way or the other. I'm not so familiar with the document. I'd have to defer again to
Wind
Carrie.
turbine has been evaluated and certified by the Small Wind Certification Council.
Yeah, I imagine it's validating that it's a safe structure, but I think the considerations that Mr. Turner, I don't want to speak for you, but I think what he's kind of bringing to the table is the fact that these structures have manufacturer specifications, that they've been tested in a way that in the event of either first responders or technicians or folks that are involved with them, they mark what a distance is as far as safety. For example, if there's a thunderstorm or lightning, is there a form of a buffer distance of some sort that we should recognize? Is there a fire rating of some sort, or any of these type of events might have a possible adverse impact? We've seen this. I think Mr. Turner kind of led to the point about data sheets were definitely referenced in the past by the supervisor situation as far as the large scale. So it's not necessarily directly comparing, but it's saying that these documents are out there and each system alone is unique. Different manufacturers have different specifications. I think Mr. Turner is kind of referencing more so how does this system specifically fit in with this location, and is it safe at this location considering other structures? Those safety sheets certify the actual equipment, but are we looking at the location? There's a location and an equipment style thing. So I would have to, I don't want to speak for you or any other members of the board, so I'll have to defer to your comments on that.
I was just trying to clarify to make sure that they actually know and understand what they need to provide us or what we're looking for so that they can
And
get that information.
And my comment would be that if you're looking for something out of the safety data sheet as far as proving that it can coincide and fit within the area, or those ratings, I think it has to be very clear to them as far as applicants on once they receive the data, what constitutes, what substantiates that it will be complementary to the area in a safe way. It fits with the neighborhood. Do the safety ratings match up out of the manufacturer's document? I'll have to defer to.
Well, the certification document is specific to that machine for the tab keys. And also in your data is a stamped seal on the tower from an engineer from Iowa, specific to that location.
No, I see no problem with,
Yeah, well,
I believe it's on the back, Pam, of, I think it's on the back.
The tower is fairly, extremely tower.
Could you point us to that?
I believe it's on the back of this one, the September 28th. Yeah, right here.
That's the one I was looking at.
Yep. Okay.
But then he said there was another one that had the seal on it.
Yep.
There's another email. There's other ones too. And that was the other one.
Okay. Yeah, I found one here dated September 3rd, 2019.
Which basically speaks to the tower safety of the tower itself, but does not speak to how, the safety of the operators.
Okay, I think he might have it. So.
it was like in the last 6 months.
September 3rd.
Oh,
Oh.
this one I have, yeah. The reference foundation design is based on presumptive soil parameters, a geotechnical site investigation
That's insane.
prior to installation, competent professional examination and validation of the suitability of the presumptive soil parameters for the site.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have no problem, with approving this, upon just the receipt of the MSDS sheets. If there's nothing glaring in there or anyone's at risk or we're approving something we don't know, I think, boom, this goes through. That's my feelings.
Well, mine too. I have no problem with
Yeah.
approving it. I just,
Are you good with that then, Pam? If we require or request the MSDS sheets,
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I'm fine with that. I was just saying, is there a way that we could get around waiting the full 30 day?
Yeah, at this point, I think according to Dan, I don't think there is. I think that's our rules, that we do have to table this for 30 days for that required information. If that is the general consensus of the board, I guess I would entertain that we would come up with a motion.
I would make a motion that we table this for 30 days for the applicant to give us material safety data sheets. Or safety data sheets might be the more accurate term in this.
I would suggest maybe to the table it to the next meeting versus the day count.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's correct. To the next meeting. Sometimes that is less, sometimes more.
I would put it at November 4th.
You see any discrepancies with that date, Dan, on your calendar?
I'm not really seeing a huge issue, I guess, with that.
Okay, Doyle, I think I paraphrased your motion, or I tried to write what you mentioned. Let me know what you think about this. So I wrote down, we would make a motion to table until the next meeting to allow the applicant to produce MSDS sheets for the proposed wind generators.
That sounds good.
Tom or Pam, do you have anything to add, or did that sound okay to you?
That,
Dan, do you have any comments on the wording of that?
I think that's fine. I just want to kind of clarify for the applicant and everything. The issue with when we do these public meetings, a lot of times it's based on public notice and legality and things like that. We would love to be able to just, get the information, have an instant answer, be able to wave the wand, I would say at times, and have it logistically work out more efficiently. And anytime we have these meetings, we got to do the public notice. In Iowa, it's 4 to 20 days typically as far as getting the notice out to the papers. And we've got, so we do a legal notice for the public hearings. We do a notice again out to the neighbors saying that the meeting's being held. And so we run into that logistical complications at times. And so it's not the most efficient way to, move through these things. And so that's kind of generally the challenge with holding these type of meetings and kind of operating the courthouse and the security and all those things. It's we got to go through a lot to even be able to use this room and building as far as having the courthouse open farther. So that's why we schedule on these written at night. So that's kind of the background on that. But that's my comments on that, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So we have a motion made by Doyle. The motion, I'll read it again. Motion to table this decision until the next meeting to allow the applicant to produce the MSDS sheets for the proposed wind generators. Do I have a second? Okay, we have a second by Pam. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries 4-0.
Harry, you and I will try to talk over that. So.
Okay, I am going to move down to the next item. The public hearing is now open on that item. And Dan, I'm going to ask you to please read the staff report.
Oh, for the public hearing on the conditional use permit application, this action item for the installation and use of a 250-foot self-support wireless communication tower to replace an existing tower on parcel number 8747204000004. This respective parcel is down there on the general industrial area, just to the north west of Salix. The conditional use permit application is by American Tower LLC and the Bradley J. Cobald, who have filed this to request the 250-foot self-support wireless communication tower. This is located down in the Liberty Township, section 20, southeast quarter of the southeast quarter. Okay. The proposal has been noticed in the Sioux City Journal's legal section. The neighbors within 1 mile were duly notified about tonight's public hearing. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been requested to comment. Based on the information received and the requirements set forth in the zoning ordinance, the proposal does meet the appropriate criteria for approval of the conditional use request. It is the recommendation of staff to approve the proposal. The zoning commission looked at this at their meeting, their most recent meeting, to recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment following their review session. The zoning commission's minutes and information were included in the record. It's important to point out that Iowa Code 8C does have regulations, including on page 90, of what local governments are not allowed to do as far as the consideration of these respective requests. But with that said, the site plan and everything is reviewed, and it would definitely fit within the area. And it's my understanding that this new one is replacing a previous one that's just 1/4 section over. And I think what we said was CF's land. CF Industries actually had the parcel that was just to the west. So they're looking at basically establishing this new tower to relocate. So I haven't received any major comments in opposition to this request. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board on this particular application?
My name is Andrew Bobritsky. I'm representing the landowner in American Towers. I have no comments. It's all in the packet. Just if I'm here, if you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any specific questions? I believe, to me, this looks pretty straightforward. I guess, seeing no more questions from the public, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Pam, second by Doyle to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. I guess with this particular conditional use permit, I think it's pretty straightforward. We've done these before, so I personally have no problems with this.
I have no problems with it. I think it's replacing one that's already there. That's already been approved and nobody's ever has seemed to have a problem with it. And I think it's pretty straightforward.
Do we have a? Would someone like to entertain making a motion on this?
Make a motion to pass this. What else do I need to say? Are there any specifics we need in there?
Based on tradition, and kind of the constraints on where we fit in, I think just a motion to approve, would suffice.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Doyle for approving this conditional use permit, second by Pam. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries 4-0.
Okay, and if I may have a minute, what we'll do is, we'll spend a few days, getting your resolution. You'll receive a Board of Adjustment resolution authorizing the use. And then, of course, we'll talk about the building permit. Staff, basically will, work on approving that building permit, so you get, the full package together at that time. So basically, I just got to hunt down the chair to sign a resolution for you, and I'll keep you updated in the next couple days or so. So. Yeah. Ideally, I'd like to have it done within a week or within the week or maybe early next week. It just kind of depends on logistics. Quite frankly, it's, I might have to go out of the county and acquire the signatures, but we have to, based on the proceedings tonight, we prepare a resolution that's custom to the situation. But I think, as you witnessed, it's pretty straightforward. So I think we can accomplish this in the next few days. Yeah, a couple weeks is maybe on the long end, so let's say a week and a half. Yeah, so you and I will talk some more on the phone, but we'll lock down a reasonable time frame. I just gotta sort that out, and basically you got the conditional approval, and the next thing is the building permit approval, and there was no floodplain at that site, so it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Sure. It sounds like it sounds like you'll get on to it pretty reasonable, and I think Iowa code, as far as the building permit now, gives you a 2-year time frame, so you'll yeah, so yeah. Sure.
Yep, thank you. Okay, Dan, I'll move down to the next item, and I believe that is some information item that you have for us. So I'll turn it over to you.
the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors added the Board of Adjustment to our research project as far as the decommissioning requirements of carbon pipelines. Basically, we're in a situation now where there's a lot of different information out there. There's a lot of viewpoints on the county's local jurisdiction's ability to regulate the pipelines in a way such as decommissioning. The staff, in conjunction with the county attorney's office, and I'll just kind of jump to the case real quick. Part of the resolution the supervisors put out is they wanted staff, the county attorney's office, or possibly outside counsel, the zoning commission, and the Board of Adjustment to look at what we could kind of come up with as a way to address decommissioning of the carbon pipelines. So far, initially, we've looked at the general discussions that have been out there, and I think it's been kind of front and center in the public's eye in a lot of regards that either the feds or the state have a huge role on that, but there's also contrary opinions, including this document here from the Pipeline Hazard Materials Administration that kind of talks about the regulatory as far as defining the role of PHMSA. And basically, I've shared this document with the county attorney's office to try to create a dialogue to see, based on these comments that were provided from the federal government, kind of putting some uncertainty in there on their level of regulation, that we're going to explore this and see how this would ultimately hold up. So we're working on it as far as what type of decommissioning scenario could be put into place. But at the same time, we've been very mindful of harvest and everything going on. We don't see right now having a public hearing. It's sort of a discovery time period to see what is capable. So we're going to try to maximize this harvest time to do some basic staff research, county attorney's office research, but kind of once we exit harvest, we definitely, and I'll say the same thing with the nuclear coming up on the next item, is we want maximum of involvement from our property owners, our farmers, and the entire community as a whole. And so this is definitely something that we need to focus on for sure. And I would ask that this document basically be received into our record, if you would so want to consider that, just so we have that.
I make a motion that we receive this letter from Mr. David Giles to, or it's to Mr. David Giles, President and COO of Navigator. That we receive it.
So we have I'll second that. So I have a motion by Doyle. I seconded. All those in favor of receiving this into the record, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, passes 4-0.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
And again, I just want to comment that this is a very important set of comments that have come out of the federal level. And so we basically have to kind of examine it and see this as being one of the basis, and kind of to decipher through a lot of the floating information that has been up there as far as the discussion on pipelines. We know in the last few years, we've experienced a significant debate across the board. And I think that this letter really clearly shows us that there's been a level of confusion, just the fact that the letter was written. And based on these comments, how do these kind of present as far as different proceedings that have went on? It's quite obvious there's been some proceedings that have went on throughout the state, things that have been in the courts, but I don't know if enough has been discussed about these direct comments that have directly come out of a federal agency. So that's
And people still have trouble with confusion, even with this letter, because they feel like PHMSA tells the local you have authority and then tells them they don't.
Mhm.
But what it really boils down to is FEMA is very specific that the local and state level has authority on siting. However, FEMA has all authority when it comes to safety.
Mhm.
That siting and safety are not one and the same. And I've heard a lot of people from legislators, even judges, who don't understand that.
Okay, well, that's all I have at this point, but I would encourage Board of Adjustment members to kind of maybe independently do some research as well. And I ask you to stay in touch with me as far as this kind of information, but I have sent the information, the entire concept to the county attorney's office. They kind of asked me about the timeline as well. We know that the attorney's office has been significantly busy throughout this time frame, and they've been busy. Harvest has been going on, and so we are just going to kind of factor those things into the timeline as well, because we ended up at this time of year. But we'll be really mindful of that we have the ample opportunity that the public has access to the discussion and the debate. And so what we plan on doing with both the zoning commission and the Board of Adjustment is not having public hearings, but keeping it public as far as the having agenda items each month through this harvest so we can continue the discussion. I can update you on things that I've learned during the research process, as well as working with Mr. Loomis and his staff, as well as trying to come to an answer to this reasonable request. So.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you for all your, the staff's work on this. You guys really handle a lot for us and really condense it, explain it well. So we appreciate that. I will move down to the next information item. So Dan, I'll turn that over to you again.
Nuclear, page 140 in the packet. Again, this is a continuation. I don't really want to make the comment of ditto to my last remarks as far as the timing, but this concept of nuclear and modular nuclear is very fascinating. There's a lot of things to learn about it. There's definitely advantages. Maybe there's some disadvantages, but there's definitely information out there that shows that nuclear can definitely be one of the energy options nationwide, as there's been a kind of a general discussion of it. In fact, to the point of the discussions about green energy, this technically could fit into that possible portfolio on having a minimal effect on carbon emissions. And so that could generally be a item there for consideration. And what I included for you in the packet was back in July, I started asking for some input from some of the stakeholders who we traditionally ask things of, various others. I sent that July 26th letter out asking for some comments. I had a few that on page 154 and forward where some folks kind of chimed in a little bit, but I haven't had a whole lot of folks really engaging staff on this issue, even though we've kind of at least had it out, on zoning commission agendas, and I believe we've had it on the Board of Adjustments agendas as well in the past. But what I did, just as a talking point, is on page 158. This is by no means a proposed ordinance, but it's to show you a potential path that we could possibly go down. And if we're looking at adopting a nuclear as a pathway, we ultimately would probably look at adding it to the zoning ordinance, having it be part of the conditional use criteria, and having zoning districts that we decide that it could be acceptable in or not. Where, for example, you could say maybe general industrial or limited industrial and still keep it separate from ag, that kind of concept like that we had with the solar. And I think that public input is of the essence as we get closer as far as where folks consider these to be placed. The modular aspect of nuclear is far different than some of the previous belief systems on what nuclear constitutes. A lot of times I think we think of the big plants years ago that take up so much water, they take up X amount of space, and the newer technologies definitely address the fact that maybe water isn't needed to the point that the others are. So we can run into kind of misconceptions. So we'll have to definitely define the types of nuclear that we are looking at. But modular is definitely promising. I had a meeting in August with Mid-American. They asked me kind of what we're looking at as far as pursuing this, and they had mentioned again that it's a kind of a lengthy time frame as far as identifying when you could possibly cite a project to kind of going through the line of fruition on when a project could become available. I would imagine that we're going to hear some bloated timelines that are long, but they may very well be shorter. But I think that this discussion and looking at it is about generally polling and understanding what the Woodbury County resident landowner feels about nuclear, and seeing that as possibly an option for our energy needs. And so what way do we bring in nuclear as a community for consideration is to create an ordinance environment that signals to the industry that maybe Woodbury County is open to this possibly. And I'm just saying it as possibly because we still got to poll our fellow landowners and residents as a whole. But kind of up to this point, I haven't seen a huge level of opposition from the level of information that got out. But we're definitely going to continue, like I had mentioned before, on the pipeline using this time frame wisely. So what was provided in the packet was just an option of showing you what a potential proceeding would be, whether we do it with the placement of the conditional use and maybe general industrial or limited industrial. We don't have a lot of limited industrial parcels in the county. That's one of our smallest zoning districts, and shockingly general commercial is as well. The Highway 20 corridor is pretty much our commercial district. We got a little bit kind of going into Salix, but we don't have a whole lot of commercial there. So I think it quite clearly would land in general industrial for sure. But again, those are questions for our public to decide. And so I only put this ordinance framework in there as for a talking point or at least a discussion to land us somewhere. Again, I haven't seen a whole lot of ordinances at the local level that address nuclear because it has such a level of federal supremacy to the point that I think by the time a local community got the project, that a lot of things would technically be worked out. And what I mean by that is technically, I would argue that our ordinance right now existingly could facilitate nuclear under the interpretation of 3.03.3 that we used on the Bitcoin. But I think with a concept is so consequential and important that it's imperative to not have it be an interpretation, but an enumeration that is fully understood by the public and clearly written out in writing so that it sends a signal to an industry as well as to the public on what those expectations are. And so that ordinance amendment that I put in there for talking point purposes, I tried to adapt it very similar to things that we've dropped in our ordinance, like telecommunication towers is in there. We've now have the solar in there, but we don't have a lot of enumerations in our ordinance for conditional uses. They're widely open. And so anytime that we can maybe latch down and enumerate in there in a way that makes sense, I think it's relevant and important. So I just wanted you to be aware that that information there in the packet is not necessarily a proposal. It's just meant to hopefully kind of kickstart the conversation so that we have something to work off of. So please don't construe that as the proposal, because there's going to be proposals for sure. So we need to start somewhere. So that's my comments.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Does anyone on the board have any questions or further comments for Dan?
I really appreciate the amount of work you're putting into that. I think that the time frame that I have heard from people from Mid-American is 10 to 12 years. I've invested in numerous nuclear programs, and the old ones were typically 30 years. And what people don't realize is, so we went through a 30, 40-year period of not investing in nuclear. And so we're going to have like a 70-year jump in technology from what we had to what our new technology is. So it's a huge jump. You know, when you're talking a better part of a century, I would hope things get better.
Yeah, and you'll notice that the duty of the county is to regulate the public health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. And at times, when we deal with the concept of federalism, we run into it a lot lately. Woodbury County is one of the greatest case studies of simply teaching governmental relations across the board. And what I mean by that is we run into very specific examples on the federal government's relationship with us, including one that we just did tonight. And that telecommunication tower shows very clearly the federal government's involvement in ensuring that the nation has a communication infrastructure. What I mean by that is that Iowa Code 8C that was enumerated in your packet, they have by law things enumerated that we, as regulators of public health, safety, and welfare, we could argue pretty clearly some of the points about what telecommunication towers are. But the Iowa law, as well as the FCC, has regulations that assert that federal authority. And in the case of this, it's very clear how those communication laws have been written, that we're pretty much to the point on this realm of federalism, to the point of regulating it based on placement. That is the kind of the key thing. We look at it and we see the setbacks. We see the nuclear industry, the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Agency Commission. They have very specific guidelines. Michael Montino, our emergency management coordinator, he fortunately has a very vast knowledge and a background, which is going to be very beneficial to Woodbury County. He attended the zoning commission a couple months ago when this first kind of came up. And he explained he knows a lot about the big ones and the modular ones. And he looks at it through the emergency lens. And so if he signaled to look at it from the emergency, that affects departments, that affects the nature of how he can pursue funding even through the federal. And so it's kind of very eye-opening on how these things can kind of create a comprehensive project as a whole for the county. There's just a number of things on how it can impact economy, it can impact safety, et cetera. And there's the industry is heavily regulated at the federal level in a way to ensure some kind of level of infrastructure and a level of safety because of the said concerns generally about them. But I'm not going to get into big safety records tonight or any of those great details. But the industry as a whole tends to, when everything's optimally running right, can definitely coexist and be a part of the community as far as being generally safe. And so Those are things to definitely consider and receive testimony when we go into the potential of amending the ordinance. I know the zoning commissioners were very interested in hearing what Mr. Montino had to say, from the safety standpoint. And hopefully, once we get to public hearing standpoint, we'll be able to definitely learn more from the public as far as generally what their views are on it. But there's definitely a lot of optimism to see, definitely in the debate. There's always a little negatives too, so we'll try to always weigh everything as objectively as possible as the information comes in. So that's all I really got.
Well, thanks a lot, Dan. A lot to go over and keep us aware of. So sure appreciate your guys' work on this.
Thank you.
I guess I will move down to item 6 tonight. Is there any public comments on matters not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will move down to item 7. Do we have any more of a staff update, or have we covered everything?
As a whole, we have a lot going on. We covered 2 of those for sure. Board of Supervisors, tomorrow night, they've got just a 1 or so acre rezone, which I think is really one of the most fascinating aspects of being on the end of both pendulums. We have basically what we call a boundary adjustment, where a landowner simply wanted to sell their neighbor about an acre or so. And in order to do that, we realized that the 2 parcels are in 2 different zoning districts, the AP versus the AE, which again are mostly very similar uses. And so we're asking the board to consider flipping the district so they can simply do a parcel combination via the assessor, so they can add that portion to their lot. And it's very fascinating because, when we originally brought that to the applicant, and we've got some big words in zoning sometimes that give off an impression that we have to clarify very quickly. When you hear the word minor subdivision, that can go a couple different ways. It can go like, oh, minor, not that big a deal. Or it can be many lots that change the density of a neighborhood. And when you have a rezone can get into the psyche sometimes that my way of life is going to change in this neighborhood in a huge way, because we look at, industrial zones versus residential zones. So when you throw that out there, it's always worth a further explanation on exactly what's happening and what the ramifications are. That's why it's so essential that we use 1,000 feet for the notification of the public when it goes through a rezone. Rezones don't come to the Board of Adjustment. They go to the Zoning Commission. Then that gets sent right over to the supervisors. But when you have a rezone, the neighbors are notified that this property is going to be switched from the AP to the AE. And it's always the duty of staff anytime we get comments is to simply fully explain that. And I never like answering something with, oh, it's not that big a deal. You got to answer something with, yes, here are the facts. This here is just a parcel that's in a similar district, but we have to go through the proceedings because it's not legally designated as the district for the home house and the neighbor. I think neighbors can relate to somebody selling a piece of land or an acre or so. I think that's pretty relatable. And I think that's the best way to kind of describe that a neighbor's selling a piece over. But we can run into rezone. Typically our rezones are when somebody's doing a subdivision coinciding, where we put those 2 projects together, splitting, let's say 5 lots. Our ordinance automatically requires a rezone if you're going to have more than 2 houses and a quarter. So if somebody wants to split 5 lots with the purpose of building a house, we're going to tell them you need to run the rezone in conjunction with the subdivision. So if you've watched the Board of Supervisors agendas at times, you'll see the same applicant, 2 separate items to rezone and then to do that. And you're using these 2 separate functions, but you're kind of explaining the same thing. You're just describing an entire project, but they're 2 processes to get the applicant to where they need to go. And there's a lot of intricacies in the splitting of lots, and everything is location. And we know that in zoning, location hits you on every type of regulatory action. As you know, the zoning district you're in dictates whether it's a conditional use or an allowed use, or if something's just not fitting right, maybe there's a variance scenario in there. So it's very fascinating, and I do think I always try to clear my mind and think, if I'm the resident getting that letter in the mail, if I'm getting that Bitcoin letter in the mail, or I'm getting that tower in the mail, or I'm getting a borrow pit in the mail, I try to explain it, enough without, creating a sense of confusion. I try to point people to call the office so that we can actually have a conversation on what those are. And I can tell you several times through the years, folks have seen that word subdivision, and it's kind of led into major concerns, and rightfully so. It's just those words that we use in zoning sometimes can sound more extreme than they are, or even sometimes maybe not as extreme. So anyhow, I just kind of wanted to explain that, because this one going before the Board of Supervisors is by far the most minimal level of a rezone that I think we will ever see in the history of Woodbury County. So that's why I'm fascinated with that one. So. But
Has the new county engineer started yet, or when's that up?
yeah, Tom's question for the record, the new county engineer is now working for Woodbury County with Mark Nara. So he's going to do a transition, kind of work together for a while. So her name is Laura Severs. And so they'll work together so she can glean as much detail off of Mark's vast knowledge. Because I can't imagine, the things that are in Mark's, brain as far as his historical knowledge of everything. And I think Laura's going to be really picking up and gleaning a lot during that time period. And Mark is a really good teacher too, and he'll know what to kind of point out. So I don't know what Mark's final kind of cutoff date is, but we're fortunate to have him, I think, for a few more months. And yeah, so I imagine at some point we'll hopefully everybody will be able to meet Laura or talk to her, but I will be crossing paths very quickly, because she's already receiving much of the zoning communications and everything, so that she can get up to speed with everything. So.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. Is there any board member comment or inquiry any further? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion by Tom for adjournment. Do I have a second? Second by Pam. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Adjourned. Passes 4-0.